there is a huge trial that's happening in Wisconsin, and it hasn't been on CNN or MSNBC or on the front page of the New York Post, but it probably should be because it's a big deal. Joining me on screen right now is someone who alerted me about this, and I feel bad I didn't know about it. Stacey, you're here. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I've had you on before, and you've been through so much over the last few years. Tell me about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, I came on to tell you about my husband, Ryan, who was my high school sweetheart. Uh, we got married and uh, we're together 25 years. And I sadly took him to Beaumont Hospital in Dearborn, Michigan, and where we didn't know it, but our rights would be null and voided. Uh, we would lose all medical rights, body autonomy choices. And this trial that's going on today has revealed so much as to why that is. Our healthcare system is very broken. But sadly, I lost my husband to hospital COVID protocols being forced on us.
And obviously, prayers go out to you and your family because you never ever thought you would be in this position.
Oh, gosh, no. No.
Are you out there to support their family, or why, or kind of like to root them on, I guess, in a way?
Yeah, so I actually learned about Scott's daughter, the Schara family. I learned about them when he had a rally in Appleton, Wisconsin, outside of the hospital that took Grace's life or caused her to lose her life. And I came to the rally and supported him and spoke on stage and told Ryan's story there. And we've stayed in touch throughout the years. And finally, he just had the means to be able to afford to fight this as far as it needed to go. He refused to take any kind of plea deal because they would put a gag order on him, and this would never make it into the public. So one thing good about where he's at now, because he is the first to get a hospital COVID protocol death, a wrongful death, to go before a jury trial in the state of Wisconsin and Appleton.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's making history. This is groundbreaking. It's a big case because a lot is riding on it. Obviously, so many people have tried to get things this far. If you were nobody wanted to take a plea deal to obviously have a gag order, but it costs tons of money to get it to go to a trial. Um,
Yeah, obviously. Let me bring up a picture. And who is this on the screen? Explain, Grace.
well, that is Grace Schara. She was 19 years old, had Down syndrome, and her dad calls her his little buddy. It's so cute. They had such a close relationship. And he took her into the hospital in Appleton, Wisconsin, and her oxygen, like Ryan's, was in the 90s. It was doing good. A doctor had testified on the stand that was a toxicologist. Or pathologist, I'm sorry. He was a pathologist, and he even said that Grace should have been sent home with just 3 liters of oxygen and given an antibiotic. And she was never she never should have been admitted into ICU. But the reason she was is because they started her on Precedex, and Precedex is a heavy sedative, and it has to be monitored closely in the hospital because it has several adverse reactions like causing respiratory distress. So there's a lot of they finally had so Grace needed an advocate because she was special needs, and they found a reason to kick the dad out of the hospital because he was silencing an alarm in the room that they had instructed him how to do so Grace could sleep. They kicked dad out, and the Grace, who has never been home alone ever in her life, who has the mind of a 7 to 11-year-old,
Yeah.
was left without an advocate for over 40 hours in the hospital.
Oh my.
And in that time, they had strapped her down to the bed and put her in restraints, and they were constantly keeping her laced with heavy sedatives. Giving her tons of that, Precedex, lorazepam, and it took some legal work and a lot of threatening of the hospital to get an advocate back in, and they allowed the older sister, to come with Grace. So the sister was with her when a nurse came in and injected Grace with lorazepam, Precedex, and morphine 3 minutes apart. And she was not on any kind of ventilator because her oxygen was always fine, and the dad was always with her to make that decision. if they ever needed to intubate. They refused a pre-authorization of a vent because Grace didn't need it at the time. So now there's no vent on Grace. Those heavy injections were given, and then a doctor put a DNR, so that's do not revive, order in place without the parents'
The
consent.
doctor did.
The doctor did.
Isn't that a family or a power of medical attorney thing usually?
That should be. And that has been what that trial has been about, because when the sister felt Grace getting colder to the touch and her oxygen dropping, she asked the nurse. Now, let me also tell you that the nurse had a total of one patient in the hospital that day, and that was Grace. There was no other patients that she had to take care of, just one. And she asked the nurse, "Can you take Grace's temperature? She's getting colder. I'm concerned because her oxygen is dropping." And the nurse told her no, told her that this is to be expected.
Well, let me back up if you have time.
Sure. Yep.
Why I know with your husband's story and others, why did she go seek treatment initially? Was it COVID? Was it a bad flu? What was going on?
Yeah, so she was having like respiratory flu like symptoms.
Okay.
They went to an ER, or not ER, I'm sorry, they went to a walk-in clinic,
Yep.
and the walk-in clinic had said that we think that she should be seen. We think she should go into the ER, even though she was supposed to be just kind of monitored because her oxygen was still stable, wasn't in a critical condition. She should have been just monitored. Instead, they put her in the ICU because they gave her Precedex, and you have to monitor Precedex.
What was this right at the beginning of the whole COVID when it all started, or
They were in 2021, in October of 21.
wow?
Yeah,
So yeah, because COVID really started what April, May of February
20.
2020.
Yeah, March of 2020 is when they started the shutdowns.
So this kind of stuff was even going on a year later.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay. So how did she? What was her cause? I had a cause of death. Did they have a cause of death?
Well, they label her as COVID. However, she was getting colder to the touch. Nurses would not come in to save Grace. So the sister gets her parents on FaceTime and says, like, to her parents, like, Grace's oxygen is dropping. She's getting colder. They said, well, get a nurse in there. And she goes outside, and she said that she said on the stand that there was about 30 nurses outside of Grace's room. And she's yelling to them to come save her, and they wouldn't. They yell back, "She's a DNR, we can't." And the parents are on FaceTime yelling, "She's not a DNR, come save our daughter." And security was brought up to prevent the nurses from going in to stop her from dying. And she died in her sister's arms, 19 years old, while her parents had to watch on FaceTime,
Is
begging the hospital to do something.
and I'm gonna read it because I want to be fair to everyone. Ascension Health, that's the owner of the hospital in Appleton, and you've probably heard all of this. They deny the allegations. They say no wrongdoing. They maintain all actions were medically appropriate, contend a physician had clear consent. Grace's death, they say, may have resulted from natural illness or underlying health issues. And they say that this is the first wrongful death jury trial over COVID-19 in Wisconsin. And
Mhm.
so, what is the argument that it was like malpractice over the do not resuscitate, or what's the main crux of the argument from?
Oh boy. Well, we've been all over the place. First, the defense team just went into public shaming of the father. They tried to question, where does he get his research? Who is he listening to? Where is the science coming from? So they even went after him as a Christian, saying, you're one of those that said that we're in a battle of good versus evil. And he said, yes, I have said that. And so they were kind of going after his character. That was their first type of defense. And then afterwards, it turned into the parents made her a DNR by not wanting her on an intubator, by not pre-authorizing they call it a DNI, do not intubate. That would be the same as saying you do not want them to be revived if they code.
Wow, yeah, and I see here from a local article that defense attorney addressed the court saying we believe the evidence will show the doctor's care and treatment of Grace met the standard of care that applied. And I wasn't there. I don't know, so that's why I'm putting
Right.
both sides out there. So
Mm-hmm.
is it that the a lot of people probably dealt with this, and you probably met people in the United States that have dealt with this.
Um,
Was it the when COVID happened? Is your point, and that is the point of bringing up in this trial, that the protocols were just they were wrong? It wasn't thought out. It wasn't proper. Is that kind of the crux of what we're getting at? Kind of.
yes, I mean, that is a part of it. Like, a lot of us knew that there was something wrong about the protocols because they were just heavily sedating patients and then forcing you onto remdesivir or forcing you onto a ventilator. Uh, the worst part of it all was just lack of informed consent. And what we're learning is what is considered informed consent or consent. Is it not battery if somebody forces you to do something you don't want to do to your body? Is that medical kidnapping? I mean, where do we draw the line on when what is consensual and what is not? So the hospital is trying to say that once you get admitted into a hospital, you basically are consenting to whatever treatment they want to give you.
Oh,
Uh,
oh
yeah,
wow.
and that they don't need your that for giving you remdesivir or giving you Precedent, like things like that. They're trying to they keep changing their stories about when they need a consent and when they don't.
Oh, because
Um,
I just Googled it. Informed consent is the process by which a person voluntarily agrees to participate in a medical treatment, procedure, research study, or other activity, being fully informed about the risks, benefits, and alternatives. So, are they saying, for example, let's say I need it because I might have some kidney issues. If I need to
mhm.
go in for a kidney surgery, does that mean when I go in that door and sign that they can literally do anything, probably if I'm even out of it?
Yep, actually, even a step further. So they even said that two doctors can call and make the decision and make you a DNR. If you were to come in unconscious and they couldn't get an advocate to speak for you, that two doctors could come to the conclusion to make you a do not revive.
Shouldn't it, and this is just my opinion, but shouldn't it be the other way? Shouldn't you do whatever it takes to keep that person alive until obviously my wife or their, father or husband says,
Exactly.
okay, I didn't think that's how it worked.
Yeah, nobody probably did. And if anything, let's just say like that doesn't go in our favor on this time. If it didn't, this is exposing how broken our healthcare system is. Because to go back and listen to what the defense has said on the stand, and to actually say where our healthcare system is today and in what implies informed consent, what doesn't, it'll actually like send chills up your spine because
So
this is very scary.
it could this, I mean, and hopefully if you said if her father, he has the wherewithal to take this to court. If
Hmm.
it doesn't go your way, I mean, this sounds like this could be a case that could set a precedent across the whole country.
It will. It will. Because you can't put a gag order if it gets to a trial, like if you were to settle out of court, we'll start with that. If you were to settle out of court, they're going to put a gag order on the family where they can't talk about the case.
Yeah.
And Scott didn't want that. He said it's never been about the money. He doesn't want the money. He just wants justice for his daughter. And then for this to be documented forever and what these people have gone through, so that this could open the door for more cases to be heard. And maybe, other people might pursue investigations to see if this was a little bit further than civil. Maybe it needs to go something higher up.
So now, do I just read what informed consent is, but is this the hospital or hospitals across the country writing their own rules, or is there a medical board, or like how does that work? Like literally, let's say I was just myself, I had no family, and the DNR thing, it floors me. Is this the rule, just a rule?
Well, there's a question on what is considered standard of care. So if they feel like they were following standard of care, um, that they would be protected because there was a PrEP Act put in place during 9/11 that most people don't know about that said in a state of an emergency, hospitals, nurses are covered, have a blanket liability protection from wrongdoing because of it being an emergency. So as long as they are considered to be following standard of care, they're protected. However, in this trial, they started to change what they think the standard of care means. And it seems like they kind of just pick and choose when it favors their side. So like Grace was never given a DNR bracelet that is standard of care. So every person that does healthcare, they know if you're a fall risk or you have allergies, they usually always have a bracelet for everything. And a lot of people said that they do not resuscitate. So the DNR would be a purple band. She never had one of those. There was never that put on her. The parents even, and they even made it clear that if a say that they did put a DNR in, which I know they didn't, but let's say they did. The moment that they started shouting, "She's not a DNR, save our daughter," that should have went away. That should have that they would have had to jump into action to save her.
Are
But
they
instead, they're
using?
like, we couldn't get a hold of nobody to make that decision. But the parents are on FaceTime
Yeah, and I'm
talking to them.
shocked. I just looked here at situations where a hospital can act without informed consent. One of them says public health orders. I had no clue. Was that part of the COVID whole thing? Well, I never knew. Was that actually part of any CDC, or was that part of it?
Well, what's interesting is they did try to bring up at one time that they were just following orders. They're following what the CDC guidelines say. But our Grace's attorneys were saying that the CDC does not dictate hospital policy. They don't regulate medicine. They're just a recommendation. They're literally a recommendation. We recommend you use the ABC drugs, but they're not forcing it. So who is? Because when you go into a hospital, if you like for me myself, I said we don't want this protocol. Why are they forcing this? And I had them tell me, well, there's some big agenda going on. We don't know what it is, but our hands are tied due to politics. Our hands are tied. We have to use this protocol or we lose our jobs.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to again where the hospital says, no wrongdoing. They maintain all actions were medically appropriate. Does this case show then that we need to learn from this? Because hopefully not in my life, hopefully not in my kids' life, we're going to have another pandemic. And even if it's, I won't even go into what I'm thinking, but to every like here I'm in Michigan. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're from Michigan, but you're in
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin now. But in Michigan, we still Governor Whitmer right now tomorrow could do the same thing she did. Do we need legislatures, states to put this down in gospel as to what needs to be followed? Because it sounds like it could happen again.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Because something nefarious has gone wrong in this hospital system. Um, I mean, I think we need to be looking at, is it possible that hospitals could have abused our tax dollars when they were given COVID funds? Is it possible that hospitals might have seen dollar signs that was given and maybe created COVID patients that necessarily weren't, or used forced treatments onto clients or patients to actually get those money? I think that's a honest question. It's possible, and I think it's worth looking into because there is multiple cases in Michigan. There's multiple cases all across the U.S. where everyone was treated the same way, being denied their right to refuse, being forced onto a one size fits all protocol. And one thing the doctors were trying to avoid was that the the drug inserts that come with drugs like Precedent, lorazepam, morphine. I mean, Grace's breathing became very rapid. She was becoming, they said she was going into a state of acidosis. So she was breathing rapidly after they gave her 2 doses of Precedex. And even though they try to say, well, we're following the standard dose, the small dose, but they say they last in your body like 20 hours. And so they did a double dose. They argued what is considered a overdose versus over sedated. They had to argue that. They admit she was over sedated. They admit it. They admit that they had to try to stop to do the extra dose of Precedex, but they gave her a dose of morphine before they ended the other dose of Precedex. And it was basically she went from breathing for her life, trying to breathe rapidly, trying to get that out of her system. And then when they hit her with the morphine, that's going to take that rapid breathing and
Yeah.
make it stop and make it slow, but then you code because it'll
Let me
stop
ask
your
you,
heart.
and you may know this. It's not related to this case. Maybe it is. So during COVID, if my wife would have taken me to the ER
Mm-hmm.
and I was horrible and I got admitted, would my wife have been able to if they put me on a ventilator, could I have said no, don't do it? Could she have said no, don't do it? Would that have been legal, or could they have said no, we're doing it?
Well, that's exactly what they did for me and my husband. My husband had said no. They documented that he refused, that he was alert, he was coherent, he was comfortable, and the doctor had told me on the phone that he was going to vet my husband with or without his consent.
Because
All I got out was that's illegal, and he slammed the phone down on me.
I think most people think, I've done it with my dog at a veterinarian. I've walked out, but I've said, most people think that, like, if you're in a hospital, if you're in a doctor's office, that you can stand up and you can leave at any time. What you're telling me, it sounds like that's not necessarily always the case.
Nope, nope. There's other people where I know that their loved one was like, "Come get me out of here." And when they came to get them out, the cops were called to try to keep them in. They didn't want to release the patient, and even the patient's coherent and allowed to leave, they won't. And the biggest thing that they were doing to everybody was giving them what they call as anti-anxiety meds. They say they use them all the time, but what they didn't know, what they're not wanting to tell people, is that all of those will make it harder to breathe, make it more labored to breathe.
I'm assuming that the hospitals are probably scared. If they let the patient go, the patient dies, they're going to sue, something's going to happen. But
That's
I would thought you always,
you sign AMA. Yep.
yeah, I thought you always signed something saying that I don't hold them responsible, but it sounds like the whole system, everything needs to change. In this should be on CNN. This should
It
be
should be.
on the New York Post. I haven't seen this anywhere. Have you?
No, I have. We know. Well, she did. They did go on the Glenn Beck show before the trial. They did go on there, but nobody has wanted to pick it up since the trial has begun.
It needs to
And
be on, instead of CNN sitting and yelling at each other all day.
yeah,
Stories like this really matter. And this is not really, it shouldn't be a political thing.
it shouldn't.
It should be to learn from what happened, because this could happen easily again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, what is the goal of is her dad, right?
Yes.
Is his goal, I'm sure he wants, it sounds like could he have settled at some point?
He could have. Yeah, there was opportunity, I think, to done that. But the dad was dead set on, nope, I'm going to take this to a trial. I
So
want to go
it's
for
not
jury.
about the, it sounds like it's not about the money.
Nope, not for the hospital. Yes, probably looking that way. At least it appears so. But I would say the for her, no. I know the dad. Nope, said he doesn't even want the money. If there was ever some money that was given and from this, he wants. I've heard he wanted to donate it. It's he just wants justice for his daughter. So, and can we fault him for that? And can we fault him for listening to other news sources, like the hospital trying to shame him for listening to other forms of science? But he trusted the white coats. He put his daughter in the hospital in their care, and they did everything against what they wanted. And then the biggest thing was not choosing to save Grace or attempting to. They most like wrote her off as just like, oh, there ain't nothing else we can do.
Wow.
um
Um, and once again, the lawyers are saying no wrongdoing. Her death may have resulted from natural illness or underlying health issues. That's what I have in my notes. That's what they brought up in court, probably, right?
Yeah, I they keep saying it was from COVID. They keep saying COVID pneumonia, and not too. They haven't really talked too much on what would have been their game plan had they intubated her like they wanted. What was going to get her better? Because if it was anything like the conversation I had with the nurse, I asked, "What is my husband on with this forced protocol that's going to help him get better?" And she looked at me and said, "Well, nothing, but it's all we're allowed to give him." And when I asked, "Are we going to let a healthy young man just die?" She looked down and said, "It's not right, I know, but if I fight for him, I'll lose my job."
Okay, so it sounds like, and you would probably agree with me, this is my opinion I'm stating, because I have to say opinion versus news.
Right.
My opinion, I get slammed a lot for bringing up what happened 5 years ago. I think it's more important than ever to continue talking about it, because if we don't,
Yep.
we're
It'll
going to end
repeat.
up in the same thing.
It's
Um,
absolutely.
so what are you hoping that lawmakers, even if it's state by state, can
Yes.
start digging into this and setting up laws that
Yes.
prevent.
We need that. We need that. I know that there are some cases happening elsewhere. There are some others getting ready to be picked up. There are some that are gonna. I heard that there's another one going to a jury trial in Wisconsin. I also have heard there's some criminal investigations in some states. There's some states trying to pick up criminal investigations. So things are moving. We need our states to investigate this. I could give them so many signatures of people just in our state alone who would want something done. I have hidden camera footage from inside the hospital as evidence. I have so much. This needs to be investigated. And honestly, we need to hold our officials accountable if they refuse to, because we're saying, hey, that we think there's a crime here. I could present you this probable cause. Are you going to investigate it? If they don't, is that a crime?
Would you take them up if they said, "Hey, come to Lansing, testify at a committee hearing"? You would do that, I'm sure.
Hands down. Absolutely. Sign me up tomorrow.
Have you talked to any lawmakers about anything like that ever?
I've reached out to a few in the very beginning, some that were actually retiring out and not going to be in position anymore. And I have talked to people that were running for state governors. So we're going to see. We're going to move forward a little bit more now and see what we can try to get for changes. And I'm praying that Grace was chosen by God to do just this.
Amen. And I want to make it important. It's not political, or it should
No,
not be,
should
because
be.
this is happening to probably Democrats, Republicans, Independents.
Yes.
It doesn't. It's a medical thing.
And what's really important, you always see like the right versus left, which one is pro life, which one's pro choice. But if they're gonna, even the people on the left, if they're dead set on my body, my choice, this couldn't scream that any louder. Imagine the impact if both sides come together to hold our government, our healthcare accountable to this, because these are patients, these are lives, and it's just a matter of time before someone's in a car accident, taken to a hospital, and then you find out there everything we've been saying from the outside, what we witnessed. And it is a terrible position to be in, is to be in a hospital begging for your right to live, begging for your right to have options, and for a nurse to kind of look at you and go, I'm basically sorry you came here, you messed up now. I have to think of what's best for me. I mean,
I just remembered when I was a news reporter at my TV station, I did a story about how the state of Michigan would not release, when someone died of COVID, what they would say died of COVID, they would not release the comorbidities. Okay, so they had COVID. Did they have leukemia? Did they have obesity? Did they have whatever? In the state of Michigan told me they didn't track it, they didn't have it, they wouldn't
mhm,
release it. And then when I did that story, they came down on me. They were very upset that I did that. Other states like Alabama, they would say, you know, COVID, but also there's all these other things. Michigan never did that. That's
mhm.
still to this day they don't say that. And that I found that to be a problem back when I was a reporter, that, well, why aren't they saying if this person, if they have COVID, but are they also in hospice? Are they near death? And it was just COVID. That was all it,
Yes.
COVID.
Mhm.
And hopefully stuff like that can change. But I
I
appreciate
know.
you for taking the fight. I know you're taking a lot of your own money and time to do this, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you feel
We got to. This was a God movement. This is God using grace, just like I believe that God chose my husband to go through this, just to help wake people up before it's too late. Because if we don't stand for our rights, we just give them up freely.
yeah.
We have to stand for something.
I will have you on again. Keep me updated on anything and everything you hear.
Okay. Yeah, it should go into next week.